Meeting of the Hawaiian Homes Commission is called to order. The meeting is being held both in person and via interactive conference technology. My name is William Ayla Jr., Chairman of the Hawaiian Homes Commission, and today's date is Tuesday, June 14, 2022. Leah, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Wolf.
Here.
Commissioner Ka'apu.
Aye.
Commissioner Kahikinui is on his way. Commissioner Ka'upu.
Here.
Commissioner Namu'o.
Here.
Commissioner Nevis.
Aye.
Commissioner Helm.
Here.
Mr. Teria is excused and Chair Ayla.
Here.
8 members present. 7 members present. We have a quorum.
Mahalo, Leah. Okay, may I have a motion to approve today's agenda?
Second.
Randy. Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
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 Seeing none, the motion carries. We'll go right into presentation. We have Joe B. and Rodney. Good morning.
Good morning, commissioners. So just a few preliminary remarks before I turn it over to Rodney to take a deeper dive into the commission. First of all, we were hoping to have this workshop a little later in the week. So this really just all came together at 11 o'clock last night, the final touches. So we do know there may be questions commissioners may have or additional information. And we do have some time to get that to you before if necessary, before the meeting next week. The second thing is that with the unique funding opportunity that the department received with the Waitlist Reduction Act, this budget does not include those funding elements. They will be included as a separate budget when the strategic plan is reviewed by the commission, although those discussions are occurring with the permitted interaction group. So with that, I will turn it over to Rodney to walk us through the budget.
Good morning, commissioners. Our budget briefing today, what I wanted to do is start out with our financial structure of the department. And it's made up of internal funding and external funding. And I wanted to just talk about our internal funding first. The two special funds that we have are funds where the revenues are from available lands. So this is, from the Organic Act to today. The first fund is the Hawaiian Home Administration Account. And this is the fund that we fund our administrative and operating costs in the absence of general funding. This fund brings in approximately $17 million annually. And the fund excess balances. And when I say excess, it means in excess of the state budget. So in the absence of no general funding, we need to use this fund, but let's say the state provides sufficient funding for general funding, we can transfer the excess funding into the operating fund. Another caveat or part of this fund is that because we floated revenue bonds back in 1991 and then we refunded, the bonds and all that. The revenue bond, actually, the revenues from the available lands are pledged first to the repayment of the bonds. So transfers are made between the administration account and the revenue bond, and then back into the administration account. So the next fund is the DHHL Revenue Bond Special Fund. And we started floating bonds since 1991. And then in 2009, we floated additional bonds of approximately $42.5 million. And OHA has promised and pledged the repayment of those bonds. And they've been pretty faithful about repaying those bonds since 2009. And so in 2017, we refunded the bonds, and now it's $30 million outstanding. Next set of funds are the trust funds. We have 5 trust funds. The first is the Hawaiian Homelands Trust Fund. And that fund was created to receive the first settlement payments. That's claims that were from 1959 to 1988, claims that related to the lands. So what happened was we received $30 million over a 20-year period, and those payments ended in 2015. The Hawaiian Homelands Trust Fund is used primarily for capital improvement projects, but it also, if you in the act, it allows us to use the money for all purposes under the act. The next fund is the Hawaiian Home Operating Fund. This fund was created, it's actually got consolidated back in 1986, but it's actually 2 separate funds. One was the old operating fund, Hawaiian Home Operating Fund, and the other one was the Hawaiian Home Development Fund, and one was created in 1948. The other one was created in 1941. These funds were created in the Organic Act, and upon statehood, there was a condition in the Admissions Act that any amendment to that act requires congressional consent. So what happened was in 1986, we consolidated those 2 funds administratively, but even up to today, we administer those funds separately. The funds, these 2 funds, or the operating fund, is actually financed through transfers from the available lands, which is, so the monies come from the administration account. Operating portion may be used for revenue producing activities that principally benefit the homesteaders. And that's what we use for the water systems. Our water systems are financed through this operating portion of the operating fund. Also included is it allows consultant and studies and even the hire of exempt employees. And so it works hand in hand with Section 202B, which is our authority to hire exempt employees. The development portion is used principally for development projects, but it also allows us to purchase real estate, rent property, equipment, and lease equipment, and pretty much everything that except as provided by the loan funds or the administration account. The Native Hawaiian Rehabilitation Fund was created in 1978 through the State Constitutional Convention. And the purpose of this fund is basically for economic, educational, political, social, and cultural processes that improve and perpetuate things for the Native Hawaiians. So it's used exclusively for Native Hawaiians. The next fund is the Hawaiian Home Trust Fund. This fund is actually used for public purposes. We use this fund as a reserve for our guarantee and loan insured programs. So our FHA loan insured program, we have about $500 million outstanding in FHA loans. Our reserve is parked in this Hawaiian Home Trust Fund. And then the guarantee loans that we have with banks and federal credit unions are also set aside in this fund. The Hawaiian Home Receipts Fund is is actually a fund that receives loan interest, and this is as authorized by the different loan funds, and investment income as authorized by the different funds, because some of the funds receives its interest, the interest monies from that fund goes back into the same fund, but other funds are authorized to deposit their investment income into this receipts fund. The two revolving funds are loan funds. The Hawaiian Home Loan Fund was created in 1921, and back in 1921, it was the only fund until the 40s. So it's a very old fund. It was subject to a whole bunch of ceilings by the feds. And the ceiling was very small. It's like $5 million. It was reached in 1965. And that's why all these other funds were created. And so we use this fund basically for the Section 209 type transactions. That's a surrender and cancellation and re-award process. So when we award the homes and so forth, the equity portion gets given to the ex-homesteader, and the new loan would be generated from this Hawaiian Home Loan Fund. And then the Hawaiian Home General Loan Fund was created by the state through a series of appropriations. And this fund is used for repairs, replacement, new home construction, a variety of things, even farm loans in the past. Right now, we're still doing direct loan financing, but we rely heavily on our indirect loan portfolio. And then we have external funding sources. We have general funds, and this past legislative session, House Bill 1600 appropriated approximately $15 million for administrative and operating costs. And then in addition to that, in a separate program, it's called HHL 602, and basically it's linked to the line divisions, which is like land management division, homestead services division, and land development division. But the legislature appropriated a one-time general fund infusion of $10 million. And this appropriation will lapse on June 30, 2023. So it's just a one-year deal with general funding support. Okay, the next source of finance is general obligation bonds. And then, and in this past session, House Bill 1600 appropriated $37 million, $20 million in lot development, $5 million in repairs and maintenance, and $3 million for Pulehunui, and $9 million for Leali'i.
What was that again?
3 million for Pulehunui and 9 million for Leali'i, both in Maui. Okay. And then the revenue bond financing, we have about $30 million in outstanding revenue bonds right now. We're paying a debt service of $3 million, and OHA has been paying that debt. And then we have federal funds. What the legislature did in House Bill 1600 is that they created a separate revolving loan fund of $7 million, because in the past we were doing the accounting of these Nahaza loans with our trust funds. So they created a separate revolving federal fund to account for those monies. And in addition to that, they increased our federal fund authorization to $58.3 million. So it went up from 23 to 58.3. So it allows us to receive and spend monies. So that's pretty much the outcome of the session and also our funds. So if you turn to page 10, we have our development budget. And so the way this development budget reads, if you look at the top column, it says carry over from fiscal year 22. And it's separated by the Hawaiian Homelands Trust Fund and legislative appropriations. So this is a carryover balances from the fiscal year 22 budget that we're requesting to carry over. And then also fiscal year 23, the next column, it says fiscal year 23 new funds. This is the new funds that we want to finance lot development. So that's $5 million with trust funds and $54 million with legislative appropriations. Yeah. And then the total fiscal year 23 budget would be 17.1 million in trust funds and $63 million in legislative appropriations. So this would be the lot development budget. Yeah.
Where are you reading? Right.
It's page 10. Yeah. So anyway, Stuart's gonna do a PowerPoint and then he can explain what the projects. Yeah.
So commissioners, just a clarification. If you
Oh, yeah. And then page 11 is the repairs and maintenance budget.
So the development budget is on page 11 at the very bottom, where it says budget subtotal by SOF, source of funds. So again, this is would be our standard CIP, which is not inclusive of the 600 or the waitlist reduction act monies. So we will have Stuart and Daryl have prepared a PowerPoint presentation to.
Aloha Chair and Commissioners, Stuart Matsunaga, Acting Administrator, Land Development Division. And I also want to introduce Daryl Ng of Land Development Division. Daryl is instrumental in monitoring all of our CIP appropriations, keeping track of the contracts and all of that, and also in the preparation of the PowerPoint. And so we'll start with Part A, lot development projects. This is projects that address the homestead waiting list. And when the PowerPoint is up, then Daryl will lead the discussion on the Oahu projects. Of course, Daryl, as you know, is really, he's like the king of Kapolei development, and he really he knows so much of the details there. So, okay. Before we start, we have a couple of summary slides. Next slide, please. Thank you. What it does is just shows graphically the distribution of the funds between the lot development and the RNN program. And I know it's hard to see there. And we'll provide this PowerPoint to you. So Part A is our the largest portion of our development, which represents 80 million, over $80 million, or close to 80% of our total development budget. And this is for, of course, fiscal year 23. On part B, the repair maintenance budget is $21.5 million, representing 21%. Next slide, please. And this is broken down by trust fund, $28 million, 28%, and then ledge appropriation, $73 million, 72%, for a total of $101,961,000. And so you'll see that at the bottom of, I think this is page 11, the last columns showing the breakdown of the trust funds, the ledge appropriations, and the total. So I will turn it to Darryl for the next few slides on the Oahu lot development projects.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brief overview of East Kapolei. On the left side of the screen, of course, Kanehili, that's for all practical purposes completed as far as residential development. There are about a handful of maybe 6 self-help homes being pushed along by Habitat, but otherwise everybody's moved in. East Kapolei 2B, also known as Kauluokahai 2B, and where the pointer is at. That's 160 lots. All the turnkey units are occupied at about 129. And the other lots are being built by owner builders. 2C, right above that, we just went out to bid last week. We got our bids back about 28 million, of which 22 million or so will be from CIP funds, ledge funds. The remainder, about 5 million, from trust funds. So that construction should start before the end of the year. The next area, 2A, is what we're looking at for multifamily housing. Rentals and maybe a little bit of retail to subsidized rental rates. We're looking at putting in about 5 million from legislative funds to assist the developer in its financing. That RFP should go out by the end of the year. The purpose behind the rentals, similar to our Bolodrome project, is to provide housing and an opportunity for beneficiaries to fix up their finances and get ready for home ownership on a future project. Next, please. Okay, the Ewa Beach, former NOAA site. It's a recent acquisition from the federal government. They're giving us about, I think it's 80 acres. We just got the acquisition papers signed last year, so we're moving into the planning and design phase. Looking at using about 5 million. Next, please. And I'll turn it back over to Stuart.
Okay. So for Maui projects, and specifically on the fiscal year 23 budget, the largest project here is phase 2B, which is 61 lots. It's currently in design. And so we are planning to get this out to bid early part of next year. Phase 3 would be funded with approximately $1 million to start the design of phase 3 which is 76 lots. And this entire area is part of the undivided interest development. So we have an outstanding commitment to continue the development in this area. Okay, next slide, please. Before jumping into Leali, the other line item that's in there is Maui development fees. This is for sewer, water fees. Anytime we award lots in the upcountry Kula area, DHHL pays for the water facility charges and for the vacant lot awards. And so this is what that line item is for. Leali'i is divided up into several phases. Phase 1A is developed and occupied 104 lots. To the north of that would be 1B. So we are currently in planning and design phase right now. And so in addition to the subdivision improvements, there's a lot of offsite work that needs to be done on the water system, as well as highway improvements. And so we're fortunate that the legislature appropriated $9 million. That's one of the amounts that Rodney had mentioned earlier. In Honokawai, we are planning to design the first phase of subsistence ag lots. I think there might be a slide after this. Okay, so this is the master plan that was approved, the final environmental assessment last year. And so we are embarking on the first phase of development. It's on the north side. It's that upper section PH1, roughly 50 lots and $1 million going into design. Next slide, please. In Pulehunui, we are continuing development of the wastewater system that services all of the state properties in the Pulehunui area. We encumbered $17.5 million a couple years ago. And right now we're trying to address some SHPE requirements. And once we do that, then we can start construction of the wastewater system. And the legislature also appropriated an additional $3 million to continue the construction of the sewer system. In addition to the wastewater, we have, and I think I'm going to have to look at that to see if that 17 million is correct. That's actually wastewater that was earlier appropriated, and then we are reappropriated 3 million out of the 17. What was going to happen here is that a new Central Maui wastewater system was going to be constructed by the county. And so I think the legislature felt that that should not be a burden on DHHL to continue. So therefore, we were appropriated 3 million to just continue the construction within the state properties. Okay, next slide, please. So at Pu'unani development, final EA was approved last year, and currently we're in design. Subdivision, final subdivision approval is pending. We have recently secured the water reservation for all of the meters at Pu'unani Homestead. Let's see. And so we are hoping to be into construction pending water department approvals. Towards the end of this year, we're hoping to get out to bid. And so there's funding provided through the legislature, $14 million plus the $4 million that DHHL currently has in our trust fund from affordable housing credit. So what happened was that from an earlier project, the developer who we transferred the credits to, in exchange for the credits, provided $4 million to DHHL to be used on Maui projects. So we're taking advantage of that and using those funds to complete the development of Pu'unani. And that was 161 lots. And let's see, last night we had a meeting with the association there, and it was a great meeting. Everybody's really excited. And so this is one that we really look forward to. Next slide. Okay, we did not have a slide for Kahikinui Roadways. It's the last item on Maui under lot development projects. So this would be a continuation of road improvements in Kahikinui. We have designs nearly completed, going through some survey and some SHPD approvals to extend the road about half a mile in Kahikinui. Okay, jumping over to Lanai. So what you see in orange, there are lots that have been already developed. They're occupied. And the yellow section would be new development. Right now, the project is lacking water and sewer. So offsite development is critical to the expansion of our homestead in Lanai. That would be approximately 75 lots. And so we're looking forward to selecting a design consultant and starting the planning and design of offsite infrastructure.
Stuart, if I could just add, Ulama Lanai has committed to the department that water and sewer, so they're doing a subdivision on Lanai too. And our concern was that they would use up all the excess water credits and the excess sewer credits. So they've committed to us that they will make sure that we have enough water and sewer when the time comes to build this subdivision. So.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we'll do additional coordination with them. What you see here was an earlier proposal to expand the high school, as well as County of Maui had an effort to for affordable housing. So there's still opportunities for collaboration, and we look forward to that. Okay, and we are jumping over to the island of Molokai. And sorry for the glare there, but the project there is Kalamu'ula Ag Lots. There are 45 lots approximately awarded during acceleration in the mid-80s. And so we are going back to fulfill our commitment there to design and construct. So in this year's budget, we're proposing to set aside $1 million to start the design work. And this is the area right above the existing Kalamu'ula residential lots. And sorry, we don't have a flat map showing the lots, but they're approximately 2 acres in size. Okay, next slide, please. Po'olehua Ag Lots, we have some scattered lots that are unencumbered. And right now, we have approximately 10, 12 lots that we're looking at subdividing into smaller lots, but since we have our subsistence ag rules in place, we think there's an opportunity to further subdivide to provide more opportunities for subsistence ag lots. So we're looking at those, and also there may be other unencumbered lots that we can add to the pot. And that is, we have alleged appropriation for $1.5 million, and that the money is encumbered now in both a planning and a design contract. So that's underway. Next slide, please. Okay, I have to apologize that we had a slide for Naiva Ag Subdivision, which is comprised of 58 lots, again awarded in the mid 80s. So we're going through the draft EA process. We had a pre-draft submittal to the commission a few months ago, and we're going to be completing that shortly and bringing that back to the commission. Next slide, please. Okay. So on the island of Hawaii, on the east side is a Kamana subdivision lot rehab, and we have about $450,000 that has been reauthorized for DHHL, and we're going to be encumbering that for further designs. There's a lot of challenging lots that are either within the flood zone or have caves, and so we have to do additional work on these lots. Next slide. Thank you. So Ka'u Water System Phase 2 is the design and construction of the pressure regulating stations. And so we have had some funds appropriated earlier, the amount of about 2.9 million, which is will be under construction shortly. This is for construction of a 100,000 gallon water tank, and you may have seen that we had a groundbreaking a few months ago. So we're kind of wrapping up the SHPD requirements, trying to get mobilized and get that water tank under construction. Okay, next slide, please. Also, we missed Ka'u ag lots in Pu'eo. Again, these are accelerated lots from the mid 80s. And so we're looking at starting the design work on this project. And then Lalamilo Housing Phase 2A Increment 1. There's a carryover of 950,000 in trust funds, and we're looking to do remediation within the Increment 1 portion in green. Let's see, next slide, please. So that completes Part A, lot development, and we'll dive into Part B, which is the purpose for repair, maintenance, and operating costs. So next slide, please. So under this, under purpose for, a lot of our projects are repair, maintenance of sewer systems, water systems, drainage systems. There's a lot of landscaping type of work where there's brush control close to our subdivisions, and it's really to provide health and safety within our subdivisions. And we'll go through this quickly. So Papakolea, we've expended some funds, and sections in red are completed. The other sections are remain. One of the things we've had to struggle with is that our repair maintenance budget, we get about 5 million from the legislature unless a specific line item is provided in the budget. And so, you know, we could easily expand, well, in terms of the magnitude of R&M program, I mean, we're in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But you know, because of the lack of the funding, we have to phase our projects and slowly attempt to remediate these issues. The big thing here is that the sewers are currently under DHHL maintenance. So if there is a sewer spill or break or something, our consultant and contractors have to go out to remediate the problem. So what we want to do here is to bring these sewer systems up to current city and county standards so that we can turn it over to the city so that the city becomes responsible for the maintenance. And this is all tied.
Have we turned any of them over yet?
We have turned over Kaupuni Village in Waianae to the city. About a month ago, we submitted the sewer camera work, bill of sale, and the license easement to the city for this would be Kakaina and Kumuhau subdivisions. We're preparing to submit over other subdivisions. So we've done a lot of the camera work and all of the assembling the documents. Chair has signed a number of bill of sales and license easements in preparation to the city. So what has happened at the city is they've changed administration several times at environmental management. And so that we've had to go through a re-education program every time a new director comes in. Fortunately, there's one staff who's been there since we started this back in 2014. And so we have staff in LDD who have been real diligent at doing all of the sewer camera work, doing remediation when necessary, and then turning over. So
when do you think it's likely that Papakolea is going to get turned over? Because this has been, and I understand the change in administration, that there's been a bunch, but this has been kind of going on for a long time. And
exactly,
it's like we get close and then they say, oh no, we need something else. And then we get close, and it just seems like a never ending saga. So do you actually see a light at the end of the tunnel here where they're going to take it over?
To tell you the truth, you know, it's going to take funding. So we estimated that Papakolea alone would be $50 million. We've spent about, I think, $20 million. And so because of the limit on the R&M monies, we can only put in $5 million. So you see those sort of yellow or tan lines, you know, we got to turn those to red. And once they're all connected, then they can get turned over to the city.
So you're
And-
looking at maybe another 6, if at 5 million, you're looking at another 6 years or so then.
Possibly, I think in the next lead session, we have to make a really big push for R&M funding and specifically work with the area representative and senator. Previously, Rep. Luke had provided funds earlier in the amount of about 20-25 million. So we've got to jump on that. And in our next sufficient sums, I think you're going to see a very heavy program on R&M.
Thank you.
David, the same is true for the homesteads in this area.
I know.
Right now, we're waiting for HHFDC to be able to turn over the main sewer lines to the county, and then our lines
We'll follow.
can follow. So
Because I know we were close here, right? I mean,
We
we
are.
had done all of that inspection and camera work.
Yeah, so Kaupea and Maluahai are up next to be submitted. It's just we're trying to assemble the documents and the files to go to the city.
Well, it's nice to hear they actually did take over some, right? Because there was a time period where none of them were turned over. So, I mean,
Exactly.
at least we're starting that process. Thank you.
Right, mahalo. You know, that was our favorite colonoscopy project, if you recall. Next slide, please. So similarly, in Nanakuli, sewer improvements are required. And so you'll see on the Part B budget for Oahu, various trust funds and ledge appropriations going towards that. So, you know, because of the limitations on the funding, we basically had to kind of spread out the monies over various subdivisions and attack the most critical areas first. Okay, next slide, please. In Waianae, similar situation. We are also, in addition to sewer improvements, there are areas that are not sewered. And so we've got to assess what the cesspool conditions or septic tank conditions are. We also are finding alleged violations with various kinds of sewer connections where drains or kennels or other kinds of breaks in the line are showing up through smoke tests. So we have a program to start communicating with the lessees. Next slide, please. Also in Waimanalo, we have both flood control and sewer improvements that are, we have plans for design and construction. The concrete channel is has been bid, and we're going through the contracting process. That's about $2.5 million. So that construction will start in the next several months. Okay, next slide, please. Also sewer improvements. So you've seen this before. The area in green is not sewered. So we have to really take a good look at that. And again, a lot of ledge funding is going to be needed to improve this area. Next slide. In Keaukaha area, we're starting a master plan to look at sewer improvements throughout the community. We do have a phase 1 project that is being designed right now. Okay, next. In let's see, okay, I think we jumped over a lot of Big Island projects. I'll just speak to these. So on the matrix, there are projects in Maku'u for site remediation. We're also starting the design for the larger Ka'u water system improvements, basically to install a new line within South Point Road. In Lalamilo, we're continuing our work, Kauai High, the road channelization. So we're getting closer with working with Hawaiian Telcom to move the existing utility poles and to we just have to be careful to there's existing fiber optics in the road, so we have to be careful how that roadway is, where the poles are located and how to possibly even jacket the lines. So that'll provide the access into the Lalamilo Phase 1 area. Also, infrastructure improvements in, I think this is 2A increment 1, actually. So just trying to complete the work that Goodfellow Brothers had done. And so we're glad that the testing, the soil testing, as well as the UXO testing has been negative. So that's a positive result. So we're gonna get back in there to try to complete the work there. In Laiopua, we have brush clearing work and maintenance around the Laiopua subdivisions. And then now to Kauai, Anahola Dam and Reservoir improvements. The original plan was to remove Kealia Field number 2 and remove the lower Anahola Reservoir, which has been completed. And then initially improving Upper Anahola and improving Kealia Field number 1. However, right now there's no source of water that goes into this, and to lessen DHHL's liability for any kind of dam breakage, we're proposing to remove those fields also too. And so that they will become unregulated. However, there's still a maintenance requirement on these. And if in the future a water source is developed for that, then we'll look at improving whichever field is best suited for our subdivisions, and continuing to work with planning on this matter. Okay, next. Okay, so the other projects that are there are statewide projects. There are various engineering services, placeholders for improvements, utilities, and environmental mitigation if necessary. And I know last year LDD is required to come to the commission first before expending those funds. The R&M of improvements and utilities are contained within LDD's operating budget. So we have a source of funds to continue that work. So that's a lot of that is paying electricity bills for street lights, cleaning drains, cutting down trees, fixing sidewalks, etc. And so that is the end of our presentation. And let's see. Questions?
Yeah, Stuart, thank you. Chair, question on the Naiva subdivision on Molokai. So what are you currently doing with with that subdivision right now?
Currently, we are trying to complete the draft EA
Okay.
for the project. Our survey consultants will be on the ground next month doing the topographic survey of the lots. One of the things that was brought up in the engineering report was the need for additional drainage detention within the subdivision. Our challenge is that 50 of the 58 lots are awarded. And so when the lots were awarded in the mid-80s, a drainage study wasn't conducted at that time. And so we have to look at who's on the ground, what improvements they have, and what the drainage issues are. Because of course, we don't want to put them into any kind of harm's way. There's a huge drainage gulch that goes through there.
So
So
Stuart, you have any idea what would it cost to do that? Not right now.
right now, we are budgeted or proposing budget for about $20 million for the project. So what is shown here is 1.55 is for design funds that have been appropriated and they're encumbered. So Armtal is a consultant who is conducting the design and
What about
And
the
the- and
cost
the
for the
topographic.
EA?
the cost for the EA is built into this $1.5 million.
So the design will include the drainage studies? Will the
Yes.
design include the drainage study?
Yes, that is ongoing right now.
Okay.
So-
The good news from the Eva is when we did the water calculations for the reservation, Naiva was included, so.
And so was the scattered lots.
So we won't be faced with that issue once we finish the design and the production. Okay. Any other questions? for
Yeah,
Stuart?
I have a question. Sir, thank you for the report. I want to pivot back to Lanai, only because I was reading a recent article just a couple days ago alleging what the island has become for the super rich under Larry Ellison, and that he is buying up all the available homes, even the local mom and pop businesses. And so it's creating a dire situation for the local residents there, allegedly. And so when I look at the Hawaiian Homes map, and I think it's Pulama is the organization that you guys communicate with.
Yeah, it's Ellison's on the ground organization.
Okay, so what is that relationship like, given what the island is becoming? What is the collaboration between the department and Pulama? Would you consider that a good working partnership?
I think, okay, so recently we have,
pause.
yeah, I mean, we've always tried to collaborate prior with Lanai company because they also own the water system. And so we had a favorable relationship earlier and also with the County of Maui regarding the wastewater. So
Communication can always be better
Okay.
with the company, so to speak. And I think Andrew's leaning forward because Andrew wants to say something.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Owo. The department recently entered into an MOA with Pulama Lanai to coordinate access to the existing offsite infrastructure that both our development and their development will be utilizing. The MOA stipulates that if their development exceeds a certain amount, they will partner with the department to cost share in offsite improvements that need to be made to accommodate both developments. So that MOU was executed, I believe, in October of last year.
Okay. So what does that actually mean on the ground? Right? So when they're talking about cost share, certain things cost exceed a certain amount. What does that mean for us?
Without the agreement, if Pulama develops first and uses up all the available capacity of the existing infrastructure, and DHHL comes in afterwards, we would be solely responsible for improving and upsizing the infrastructure by ourselves because we came in last. With the agreement, Pulama agrees to cost share in upsizing the infrastructure that would accommodate both their development and our development.
Okay, good, thank you. After reading that article, I think it's even more important that we have these kinds of relationships to develop those lands we have for our beneficiaries. So that's why I was asking the question. So thank you.
I think the option to, to have the option to give our beneficiaries stability on the island is super important. We did, I think, get that MOA as a result of the department. What did we file in the land use? Oh, there we go. What did we file? We filed an action in some land use reclassification. Would you explain that?
Sure. Good morning,
Alyssa.
Commissioners. Alyssa Cow, Deputy Attorney General for the state. In October of 2021, the department, Pulama Lanai filed an application with the Land Use Commission to amend their boundaries, district boundaries, for the construction of a 201H project. At that time, the department had filed, and 201H projects are on a very expedited timeline before the Land Use Commission. So at that point, a couple days after it was filed, the department filed as an intervener into the project with the LUC. And so that is when Pulama Lanai had approached the department council both discussed executing an MOU describing what Andrew had outlined earlier.
So remember, I said communication can be better.
Yeah.
It was our filing in that procedure that opened up the communication resulting in that. So we have to be careful of the development on Lanai because you do have somebody who has a lot of wealth and wants to do a lot of things. So
A lot of control.
So we avail ourselves of the existing procedures in other agencies' discretion. So they're not the only ones that never bothered to ask us ahead of time. So I think we are being more assertive in getting other people to talk to us before you do these kinds of things. And I think we're starting to have a good track record. And Alyssa did an awesome job of.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. Lanai is unique. You have to
twist.
thread the needle in a different way. So yeah, so thank you.
Any other questions?
Chair, I have a question for Joby, if I could.
Sure.
So Joby, I just want to understand the process we're going through today, and then the process that the Waitlist Reduction Act, PIG, is going through. Those will meld at some point, but we're looking at monies that have already been set aside in prior years and been appropriated, I guess is the right word, in prior years. And we're coming up with a 2023 budget for just those monies.
Yes.
And then at some point, the PIG does its work. the commission approves it, and we're going to propose something to the ledge specifically for the 600 million of Waitlist Reduction Act funds.
Yes, so to try to keep things apples to apples, we wanted to proceed forward with our typical budget in terms of what it would cost us to, and in the CIP, that's the only budget, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, we tried to move to like a biennial concept. And so that's where in the CIP, you have this carryover part that is projects that were approved by the commission in the prior year, but we were not able to fully execute upon. And so staff is asking that that carry forward to the current fiscal year. And you're correct that once the strategic plan has been brought back by the permitted interaction group and the commission has had a chance to deliberate, then we will look at the budget for the fiscal year 23 within the context of estimated divisions between the various categories, right? But we want to look at it one fiscal year at a time, because that's typically how we budget. And so the two will eventually marry up. We'll have our fiscal year our fiscal year DHHL budget, and then the Waitlist Reduction Act budget, which will primarily be programmatic and CIP.
And then this budget that we're working on today, between the development and maintenance side, I suspect this is the case. So if you can confirm, there's no opportunity to use the new monies, the Waitlist Reduction Act monies, to fund some of the development projects that are presented today, so that we could free up those funds to push over to the maintenance projects that were presented today.
So I think that's
to accelerate the maintenance projects.
I think that's within the discretion of the commission. The purpose of the Waitlist Reduction Act is clear in that its intention is to reduce the wait list, but the execution of that is really up to the commission's discretion in establishing the budget. The staff has taken an approach to try to be as clean as possible to the purpose of the Waitlist Reduction Act, that the projects, the CIP projects that are identified or recommended will reduce the wait list in some way. But if there are, and so that's why those projects that staff deemed important enough to continue, because definitely there's always need. We try to look at funding first with legislative resources that may have been appropriated, and if not, then to our trust fund. And believe me, it's always a struggle with our staff, because I'll tell staff, okay, we have $10 million, and they'll bring back a $30 million budget. So there's always more need than we have resources for.
But are you saying that theoretically it would be possible to push some of the new monies into some of the development projects that are shown on this budget, and therefore free up some of this development money to push over to the maintenance projects?
I think
on this budget?
I think that's a conversation when staff brings forward the waitlist reduction projects, because if there is a desire to substitute some of the projects that are on that list with some of these projects, or augment that's within the discretion of the commission. We just have to make sure that at the end of the day, and that can be a discussion with council, that it's aligned with the purpose of the waitlist reduction. Act.
With the primary objective being that we're going to use all of those funds, right?
That's our intention,
Yeah.
but we have a very short time frame, as you know.
Right. So we're going to
Yes.
use every opportunity to use those funds that we can.
Yes.
I would think. So if staff feels motivated enough to make some of these recommendations, and that comes through the PIG on the Waitlist Reduction Act side, then we come back and if we approve that, we come back and amend this budget to reflect that.
We can. I
Okay.
mean, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm not sure if this is, Joby, you can answer this question, or Rodney. during your presentation. I just have a question. Regarding the operating funds, and you mentioned that $17 million that you have annually that's generating revenues. In case you mentioned that in case the legislature does not fund the requested amount for the operating fund, and let's say they do provide the funding, that $17 million, what can it be used for if you have it, you know what I mean, available?
First of all, the pledge to the to the revenue bonds, that's $3 million. So actually DHHL pledged for the repayment of those bonds, but OHA promised to pay those bonds. So since 2009, they've been paying, but if that falls through, we're on the hook, yeah. But let's say OHA faithfully continues to pay those bonds, we can use those monies for the operating fund.
Commissioner Helm, we actually will walk through the fund balances, and so that may help to understand what the proposed use of those $17 million is being suggested for.
And one more question, the HH Trust Fund you mentioned that it's used for public purposes like for guarantee loans or delinquent loans. Is that correct?
Yes,
Do you know what the amount is for that?
it's about 11 billion.
Yeah.
But it's under reserve because we have $500 million in FHA insured loans that are outstanding.
So if there's a catastrophic economic situation and loans go belly up, it's the reserve to help cover. That's what those.
What's the reserve? What's the, what are we reserving 100% or? Yeah.
So, yeah, so our FHA 247 and 184A programs, which are insured and guaranteed federal loan programs, because our title is so unique, we had to offer other assurances that were acceptable to the Secretary of HUD per the federal legislation. And so this reserve in the transaction, there is those types of loans, there is a probability because the loan to values are so high that we can end up with loans that are upside down, where the value of the home is more than the claim that is paid. So this account is intended to serve as a reserve against potential, transactional losses or those kinds. Sometimes it's just cash flow in those two programs. So we have, that's our primary, the good news is when it comes to trust fund lending at the federal level, DHHL is by far out, the amount of private sector lending we have on the Homeland's trust lands is just dwarfs any other tribal community. So it's between the 184 program, which is a guarantee program, and the FHA 247, which is an insured program, it's probably close to 600 million worth of private sector lending contingently liable. So that's resources we didn't have to put out.
Right.
But this account is intended as a reserve. It's a best case analysis, but it would probably be wise to at some point do an actuarial study. We've wanted HUD to do an actuarial on the FHA 247 because it is an insured program and the premiums have never been looked at in the history of the program.
So how do we set our reserves? That was part of the negotiation with HUD or?
So there is a requirement in the memorandum we have with HUD to set aside, I think is it 2 million here?
Yeah, $2 million. And so they would send a demand letter, we would pay them up to $2 million at a time.
Okay.
So it's a small pipeline. Takes a while to come to the.
So that's our reserve.
Well, but that was when the portfolio was less than 100 million. And as the
Okay.
portfolio has grown, we've tried to set aside as resources have allowed, reserves to try to at least have some cushion.
And then did I hear, we're also reserving so OHA promised that they would pay back these bonds, but they would make the
Yes.
payments, but
Yeah,
but
when we
we're
voted-
reserving as,
No, we don't have,
Okay.
we have reserves for the revenue bonds, but they're kept with the bond trustee in
Right.
New York.
but not because we're not sure if OHA's not gonna
No.
fulfill their,
OHA stepped up.
yeah,
and,
okay.
Yeah, they didn't have to do it, but they did.
But we also keep a conservative reserve in the revenue bond special fund so that our ratings with the rating agencies stay high. And so we've been fortunate that our ratings we have good credit in the bond market. And we want to try to maintain that going forward.
Thank you.
I think closely related to that, if you could go over the refinancing and the shortening of the term, just for the
For
commissioners.
the revenue bond special
Yeah,
fund?
so the commissioners know the history.
Okay, so the revenue bond, so the department has gone to the market twice in its history. Earlier with Mama Drake, we went out to the market to borrow from, in order to finance infrastructure. And then more recently under Micah Connor's administration. And I think we borrowed 44 million from the market. The bond, at that time, the bond payment was 3 million a year. It was a 30-year bond. And so that administration entered into a negotiation with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, who agreed to pay our debt service for the 30-year period of time. Or was it 30 or is it 20?
About 25 years.
25 years, okay. Approximately 5 or 6 years ago, the market was favorable. And so we refinanced the bonds and we were able to shave 7 years off of our repayment. And so that's a $21 million savings overall. So it's still at 3 million, but it's a much shorter bond period of time. So for us, when we went to the market, all of our earnings off of available lands are pledged. So there's a first position on all of our earnings. And so it is challenging for us to go back out to the market with any of our revenue streams because they're already pledged. But the experience, just like any kind of borrowing, our credit is solid in the market. We did not have a problem selling bonds. Some of our investors have been with us for both bond floats. And so I think it's been a good experience for us to at least be a known market, a known entity in the market, should we want to go back out again.
Okay, I just want to, before you ask your question, I just want to give credit to Rodney and Joby for recognizing that timing in the interest rates and the resulting $21 million of savings to the department. Ask it.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and mahalo to Joby and Rodney and Stuart and Daryl for your presentation. I just have a question regarding the HH operating fund. You mentioned that these funds could be used for operating the water system. Is that correct? So when you say water system, what kind of, is this for just maintenance or?
No, we have about 5 water systems statewide.
Okay.
So Hawaii, several on the Big Island, Molokai. But Molokai is the biggest one. And we pay for the electricity for the water systems. Like this year, the budget for electricity for Molokai was last year in 2022 was $393,000. And the Molokai budget request increased it an additional 225,000. Yeah. So what we did was, because it affected our homesteaders, we applied 225,000 of that increase electricity increase to that 10 million one-time general fund appropriations.
So the electric bill cost annually,
Yeah,
did it increase from the previous year?
correct.
So you know how much the increase was?
Well,
5%, 10%?
they're expecting that it's going to be over close to 550K.
Yeah, so commissioners, We apologize. The detail of the operating budget is not in front of you. So that's still kind of being refined, and we are sensitive that when we rather be accurate, because once that information goes out, it's hard to recall. But we do have the bottom line numbers. We want to just make sure we touch base with you in terms of the direction that we're moving. We will have that detail for you before the commission meeting. And I guess the question is, we've cut it both ways. We've cut it by cost center, which is by how we're divided. So like OCH is Office of the Chairman is a cost center, planning is a cost center, land development division, or we can cut it by object code, which then is for each, across the whole department. So I think last year we did it by object code. So you could see like the largest items, like usually professional services is our biggest object code, because that's where we hire all of our consultants. So, but we will have that detail for you. I just apologize, we weren't able to get that all together for you. But we, fortunately, Stuart and Daryl were able to share kind of our biggest ticket items, which are, of course, the development projects.
Stuart, can you go over the Kelka sewer improvement?
Sewer improvements, yeah, so we have a first phase design. I think it. Thank you, Cedric. So Kyoka sewers, we have a first phase design, and I think it was recently approved. And so what it is, I believe this is on. Yeah, maybe I better not guess, but
Page 24. Page 24 of the presentation, it says there's some bidding in the fall of 2021 for 300K. What does that cover?
that. Let's see.
I mean, there's 10 affected lots and 4 vacant lots.
Right, so with the construction of the sewer line, because right now a lot of these lots are in cesspools, it'll allow them to be connected. It'll allow us to consolidate and re-subdivide parcels that are unencumbered, and we can subdivide those to smaller lots and provide more homestead leases.
Mike, it'll also allow for those individual lessees to apply for NAHASDA funding to do repairs. So right now they're sort of stuck in a situation where they have a cesspool. The county is saying, if you want to do improvements, you have to come into compliance by either tying into sewer or putting in an individual wastewater system. And so if we can get these lateral lines close to as many of the lessees as possible, it will open up, hopefully, their ability to qualify for NAHASDA to do the repairs on their houses, or to, let's say there's a vacant lot and their income qualified to help qualify for the loan to build a new house. The challenge is, and this is the sweet spot, if somebody's on the street and in 5 years the sewer's coming by, but they want to move forward and they build an individual wastewater system and they basically commit $30,000-$40,000. If the sewer's nearby, you got to tie in. So they're going to have that investment. So we're actually working with the Department of Health to see if we can enter into an MOA whereby they won't have to immediately tie into sewer if sewer comes by until they get the value of that investment out. Yeah. That's going to be the challenge, I think, for a lot of folks come 2050 when the cesspools are supposed to be converted statewide. So. Thank you. Do we know if Blossom is ready for? We're not done. Okay. Okay, well, let's continue then.
If you look at page 12, the bottom box, what we did was a comparative schedule between fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 2023. But if you look at the bottom box, what I want to highlight is that loan adjustment in F, $34 million. Okay, what happened was we were processing and accounting for the FHA 247 loan buybacks in our trust fund. And so we did an accounting of the trust fund, and we identified that $34 million of cash were actually the buybacks. The homes got sold. The monies were deposited in this Hawaiian Home General Loan Fund. And so we're reimbursing back to the Hawaiian Home Trust Fund into the reserve accounts, that FHA 247 reserve account, because these monies will be used to reimburse HUD in future defaults. And then, so there's no loss of monies right now. The monies are in our funds and actually getting invested to in that Hawaiian Home Trust Fund. So they get deposited back into the receipts fund.
That adjustment was a collection over time of a number
Yes,
of
and we did
buybacks.
yes, we did a reconciliation of all the loans, and we identified all the FHA 247 loans.
And then going forward, we're doing it as we go through these.
Yes, so I would say in the future, it's not, shouldn't be more than $3 to $6 million annually.
Is this something that came up in an audit of some sort, or?
No, just on our own. We just wanted to identify all of the former FHA 247 loans.
But the question is, why didn't it come up in the audit? Isn't that what we audit our?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
That's
this
a
on our
question
own.
for the
we-
auditor next
Yeah,
time they
because
show up.
what we noticed was there was a large loan balance that was accumulating. And so we, on our own, we did our own audit.
So, and I think,
Yeah, I applaud that we did that. I'm just questioning how come the people that we pay to look at this kind of stuff didn't advise us to do this.
I
sooner.
think, yeah, it may not have been, for us, I think it was more a matter of being transparent in terms of the amount of, the sizes within the loan balances, because some of these monies, so like we purchase a claim, we bring back a claim, we pay for it out of the Hawaiian, or when we refinance it with the family, that loan is in the Hawaiian Home General Loan Fund. And then let's say if the home is sold and that loan is paid off, it really should go back to the reserve account instead of, being available for additional loans out of the General Home Loan Fund. So I think the one-time correction really was to be able to communicate to our beneficiaries and to the commission what funds were available in that account for potential lending in the future. So that's why we wanted to make that correction. But your point is well taken. It's something we can, discuss with the auditors in the future, I guess.
Thanks.
The other thing while we're on the loan fund, just to highlight, is that there is one slight adjustment upwards under the Hawaiian Home General Loan Fund in fiscal year 23, which is $2 million more for direct loan financing. That's typically interim construction lending for vacant lot homeowners who don't qualify for financing on the outside. We did want to provide a little bit more as we anticipate production to ramp up with the Waitlist Reduction Act monies being available.
Page 13. This is our rehabilitation projects, normally funded by NERV. So the first portion, the $1.4 million, is funded by NERV, and that's for the NH development program and plan $1 million, and beneficiary capacity building, 400,000. And what we did was we ramped up the Native Hawaiian Development Program and Plan from the initial one-time $10 million. We're going to fund 7.5 of it with the general fund. So it's going to be going through our grant program that we have available.
That's 400,000, you said.
Huh?
400,000.
7.5.
I'm sorry.
7.5 million.
Because it's a one-time
Yeah,
cash.
so in addition to what we normally provide, we're gonna ramp it up another 7.5.
I see.
Joby, does any of that 7.5 go toward positions to service the added work that's going to be created by having these opportunities?
Yeah, that program is was funded in what we call the HHL 602 program. We have two programs. We got the HHL 625 program, which is administrative and operating costs that pays for the salaries. This HHL 602 program is for the line divisions. So it's Land Development Division, Land Management Division, Homestead Services Division. So that's pretty much where the purpose of that money was to improve homestead servicing.
So this $10 million was a one-time allocation, and there was no clear instructions or restrictions either through a budget provisor or a committee report. So we did listen to the hearings to get an understanding of what legislative intent was. And the chair of the committee indicated that it should be for homestead services to address the homestead. So to try to honor that, we looked at an allocation that we felt, given the current state of many of the homestead projects that are funded by, put forward by homestead associations, and some of the requests that we've seen, as well as heard from legislators, an amount that we feel we could comfortably deploy in the fiscal year. And
With
that's
the
about-
current staffing? And
With the current staffing,
Got it.
yes. And so that's the 7.5
7.5.
that's intended for, and the remaining 2.5, we intend to address the deferred maintenance issues that Stuart had suggested, which are the R&M within homestead communities, or electrical costs directly associated with running water systems. So we're trying to look at the deltas. So it's more money is going to address deferred maintenance issues in the homesteads, and then a small amount to address the delta in the increased electrical costs that we're hoping is only an aberration because of what's happening internationally with our gas prices, right? We're hoping that's not a trend upward forever. So that's this 10 million that we're talking about. Very simply, 75% directly to the homesteads, 25% for DHHL operational expenditures that directly benefit the homesteads.
So we did check with Andrew and Gigi, who's sitting there very intently watching, because we wanted to make sure that they would be able to execute this, and reluctantly but enthusiastically they said that they could do it, because they see that this is an opportunity for beneficiary organization. So yeah, that's why Gigi is watching so intently over there. Okay.
Aloha Commissioners, Gigi Kyrell with the plan to go with this new infusion of funds of 7.5. It's a great complement to our homestead associations, who have many good projects servicing our homesteads. So, mahalo.
Thank you.
On page 14, we just wanted to do some quick analysis on the A&O costs. So these costs are the B costs, the other current expenses. And this is excluding the payroll because the payroll is paid all by general funds. So we're just comparing apples to apples right now. But between last year's budget and this year's budget, it's an increase of 5.21%. And what comprises up the $25 million that we have here is the administration account budget of $4.8 million. And then the NERF, 1.4 million, and the revenue bond special fund of 3.2 million. So that it represents like a 5.2% increase from last year's budget.
So we will get the detail for the commission before the meeting on Tuesday.
Yeah, on page 15, we do a historic comparison of our position count and then the positions that got funded. So between fiscal year 2022 and 2023, we continued to have a position count of 200 positions. But what changed was that we were able to get funding for 21 positions this past session. So our funded positions increased 21. So it went from 160 positions to 181 funded positions. So our total budget came up to 15 points.
Doesn't seem like we're gonna have enough people to do the work that's required.
Yeah, so just a couple of things. The first is that not all of the 181 positions have a warm body in it. That's the first thing.
How many have a warrant?
What was that?
Maybe approximately, maybe 100. So
We're still missing 81 warm bodies?
yes, statewide. It's probably between 100 and 120 at most. So we have a fairly high vacancy count. The second consideration, let me start from the good news. So the good news is that we do have additional positions between 2022 and 2023. It's 32 additional positions, I believe is the math or something. Or 21 additional positions that were funded. So that's a good news, because that's the first thing is it has to be authorized first. We have 200 authorized, then you have to have funding second. So where we have faced challenges in the past, more recently, is BNF has been very strict and not allowed us to fund our exempt positions. So that is a conversation, Chair, we have talked about, and Chair is willing to advocate with BNF and if necessary, the governor, to get authorization, because we statutorily can do it. It's an administrative constraint to allow us to fill our exempt positions. Why is that important? An exempt hire for us is almost like a private sector hire. It's much faster. It's within the discretion of the department, and we have some latitude on pay. The disadvantage is those are contract essentially, quote unquote. So they run year to year based on funding. They don't have the civil service protections, although they can be union members, so they have that. So that's, if we can get that authorization, it will allow us to be able to fill positions much more rapidly. And then the next hurdle becomes finding good people, which is the challenge we're facing currently with our civil service.
Thank you.
Yes.
So exempt positions are not in this count?
They are in this count, in this 181. A portion of these positions are currently exempt positions. Yeah.
But the 19 that are authorized but not funded aren't necessarily all exempt positions.
I believe the majority of them are. We try to prioritize in terms of seeking funding, we tried to prioritize Neighbor Island. We tried to prioritize those areas, providing direct service, and we tried to balance it across the agency because everybody's hurting.
So right now, how many exempt positions that are funded are not filled?
We need to do that analysis. And then we also need to,
Roughly on the magnitude of.
I'd have to
like
go back and look.
5
Oh, no,
or-
it's more than that. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look
and
exactly.
Those are the ones that you control a little bit better, the salary and the terms of engagement.
Simply put, yes.
Are you allowed to take 10 exempt positions and consolidate your ability to pay people into 8 positions so that you can pay them better
It's-
with exempts?
It's a little bit more complicated than that because we have, so each of those positions have a budget tied to them that are based on the salary range for that position. So for example, we couldn't take a clerk typist position that's budgeted salary might be 35,000 or 40,000 and then say, okay, we're going to hire a project manager, which the going rate might be, 70 or 80,000 for starting, let's say, for example. That would be a little bit more challenging because you're dealing with the budget as well as potentially like union issues because some of those positions are in the union. But what we're trying to do, we need to look at, okay, what positions did we get funded that are exempt? In some cases, if they can be redescribed, so they more efficiently deploy to what people need, given the current situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, we hear that on Tuesday, or that's a different?
I think we can brief the commission on that. Tuesday is, we're not gonna have all that information, but I can probably get you as to like how many of the exempt positions are funded. I can probably get you that answer by Tuesday.
So, Joby, so any of these exempt positions that you may fill in the near future, are you planning on somehow getting them to come under civil service?
Eventually, we will have to convert those positions to civil service. But what we're trying to do is, we're not stopping the conversion of the civil service. We have been making steady effort. We're not stopping the recruitment of our existing civil service. So for example, the Molokai positions that we're in recruitment for, we're not stopping that. We're just trying to seek authorization for us to allow us to fill our exempts as exempts. Because right now, in order to fill those exempts, we have to convert them to civil service and then recruit through the civil service. And it's a very slow process.
All of your exempt positions are under the administrative level?
No,
It's
it's
a variety of different
yes,
positions.
yes.
You can do that, can you? Yep. Is that
Yes.
right?
I mean, we have exempt positions all the way from clerk typist, all the way
If
up
you
to
like if you
senior.
wanna hire a pump specialist or something like that, yeah, it can come under the these.
It could if we have an
you know what I mean?
authorized, yeah, if we have an authorized position, yes,
Okay, thank you.
Authorized and funded.
and funded. Thank you.
So Joby,
Yes.
question. So the warm bodies that we're trying to fill positions, is that handled through Oahu, or does like East Hawaii does the hiring and looking for people, West Hawaii, Molokai, et cetera?
So we rely on the division administrators primarily. And as you know, we're a very small, very flat agency, but the division administrators are the ones that really kind of push the recruitment. Yes,
Hiring.
yes.
So the department here would say, okay, West Hawaii, East Hawaii, you're authorized to hire 2 people. I'm making this up.
Yeah.
And then they just run with that.
Yeah, so, yes, so we've been really trying to, with the civil service, just really trying to get as many of those recruitments out and done. And it's, if there's a vacant civil service position, our HR person is in conversation with the district, with the division administrator to try to expedite the filling of those positions, but it is
Okay.
a process.
So last part to that, is there like a number of authorized positions to fill that's currently being worked on, or we got to go through this budgeting approval process first?
No, there are, right now, every civil service position that we can fill, we are trying to get that.
Still trying.
We're trying. And unfortunately, we're being hampered by DHERD as well. I mean, they're understaffed. And so we have to get in the queue with them, behind the rest of the state in terms of getting the list. Yes, the Department of Human Resources Development.
So we ask for a list of potential applicants. They qualify them, make sure they meet the minimum qualifications. They send the list to us, and then with that, the district managers and our staff will do the interviews and make the recommendation for hiring. So we rely on another state agency to do that basic screening.
Makes sense. Okay.
Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, so because some districts may need immediate help, are you still doing the 89-day hire?
We can do 89-day hires. Yes.
So does an 89-day hire can be permanent later?
So an 89-day hire, by definition, is temporary. They serve for 89 days. They don't earn any sick leave, vacation leave, retirement, because they serve for 89 days and there's a break. And we're limited as to the number of 89-day hires we can do. But certainly an 89-day hire can earn time in that position to qualify them to apply for a civil service position. That time does count.
Thank you.
So ideally, they've already applied with DHERD in certain classifications so that they might be able to be pulled up on the list and at the same time work the 80-90 high. But that doesn't always match up.
So Joby, none of the exempt positions are established by DHHL by statute.
The statute gives DHHL the authority to be able to fill exempts in 2-year increments up to 6 years. And then beyond that, it requires gubernatorial authorization in the statute. That's section 202B of the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. So with that authorization, statutory authorization, we have established over time a number of exempt positions. The problem has been that once we became 100% general funded on the operational side for our personnel costs, BNF became stricter and stricter in terms of filling those exempt positions. They've required us to convert them to civil service before actually filling. So that's why if Chair is successful in talking to his counterpart at BNF or advocating on behalf of DHL at the gubernatorial level to give us that ability to fill our exempts, that'll open up a lot.
Oh,
for
so
us.
those positions were never funded through trust funds.
They were in prior years, our exempt positions, at one time, our general funded positions were our permanent positions, and then all of our exempt positions were funded with trust and special funds. That was the way it was under the Cayetano administration. And then as we slowly lost general funds, then all of our positions were funded with special interest funds. And now that we're 100% general funded on the personnel side, that's why BNF has gotten stricter about filling our exams, because our funding source is general funds. So they're more restrictive, I guess.
So previous administrations changed it to general funding, the positions.
Yes, we, after the Nelson case, have been advocating every year to fill to give us funding for all of our personnel costs. I'm trying to look at the owl. That's why it's very strange, because you're there, but I'm trying to make sure I talk to you.
Yeah, and actually, yeah, it changed because if we still had trust funds, we would still have control of the position. But
Yes,
once
that's
it became general funded, yeah, the government, I mean, the state could control what we do with the positions. That's all I'm saying.
And that-
Okay,
And it's a double-edged sword, right? So
yes, yes, yes.
when we did have trust funds, it was dependent upon how much revenue off of available lands. And that went up and down. And so it's, staff went up and down given those sort of conditions. So we're here today and our positions are funded with general funds. And so we are subject to budget and finance. We're also subject to the legislature and the desire of public unions to make sure all of.
I'd have to verify the 81 that are unfilled. I'd have to check with Patty as to what the vacancy count is right now.
Okay, but we do have quite a few that
Yes.
have been funded and currently unfilled.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
And we've been filling positions, so we've been
Yes.
making hirings.
We've been trying.
Okay,
As fast
so
as we
my,
can.
so my question is, so I'm getting an increasing amount of phone calls from beneficiaries expressing frustration about the slowdown of services in the Maui district office. And I have concluded part of that is the result of a position that was removed last year. And that's the Homestead Assistant 2 position, formerly Jane's position that was part of that operation for 40 years or so. And so given the amount of positions that are currently available to be filled, my question is, what is the rationale and justification for removing that position and leaving the Maui district office, which has 2 people, to manage? I'm looking at some stats, and Maui is the second, they have the second highest number of leases, total leases to manage in the state. They're slightly above Big Island and just below Oahu. So mathematically, it makes no sense for this agency to realistically think that 2 people can service that entire island. So I would like to know why that was done and why is it still removed from that operation?
Okay, that's a very good question, Commissioner Wall. And this is a common concern, certainly amongst the neighbor island offices, the district offices. And our district managers certainly are very strong advocates in terms of trying to ensure that the needs of the neighbor island communities are heard. And increasingly the demands on the district offices grow. And they've articulated that they feel like a mini kapolei, that they don't have the ability to simply not service beneficiaries walking in the door. So the first thing I just want to say that certainly 2 people offices makes it very challenging because the district manager, when they go out to do work, there's only 1 person in the office. It's never good just to have 1 person in the office. So that overall, we do need to try to get more staff out to the district offices. In the case of Maui in particular, we do give a lot of discretion to our managers in terms of their operational needs. And in that particular case, the feeling was that a lot of the work regarding the processing of the lessee needs is handled actually in Kapolei, in terms of the preparation of the submittals. The files are all here. While there are digital versions of the files, and we are trying to improve the ability for the district offices to be able to use that, a lot of the work is still done here in the Kapolei office in terms of the final reviews of blood quantum, the drafting of the documentation, the assistance that's provided. So having a homestead assistant there and having 1 here to support that work, that was the direction that the division wanted to go. That doesn't take away from the need for a position in Maui, which we think that a clerical type role that is broader and allows for a greater breadth of issues to support the district manager as well as the homestead lessees may be more appropriate versus two homestead assistants. Yeah. What's been happening is the homestead assistants, because we don't have clerical support, end up doing a lot of the clerical type roles and then are taken away from the lessee transactions.
So if I could just, having worked in state government on an outer island, this is a very familiar refrain where the Oahu-centric view of the world, it's often perception-based, that we do a lot of stuff to service the outer island, but it's not reality-based. Because on the ground, there's still a percentage of work that is still retained by the outer office. And it's that additional percentage that Kapolei cannot account for that creates the crisis that they are in. And so having given this a lot of time, a lot of thought, having spoken to our beneficiaries, having spoken to the staff more than once, looking at this position count and all the unfilled positions that can be allocated back to Oahu, I don't think there's any justification for what this has become. It's not fair, it's not efficient, and it should be corrected because there's positions available. And so Oahu should be taking from these 81 positions that provide them that opportunity now and restore that back to Maui. We can talk about what's more appropriate, what a clerk, for example, that has broader responsibilities. But in the meantime, that's just a thought. And the work that's required continues to impact our beneficiaries who are calling me. So I don't think when I look at this position, it's probably a very low SR rating. I just don't see how this washes out properly. So I'm hoping that something changes soon.
Well, we appreciate the feedback, Commissioner Awon, and can understand what you're enduring with the beneficiaries on that island. So we don't take it lightly. So definitely we'll take that, discuss it further with Juan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Joby, how is the 200 authorized positions determined?
So that is our current organizational chart and the number of positions that we have. We can, if we, let's say for discussion purposes, we're fully staffed where we had maybe 5 vacancies, could always go back to the legislature and seek additional positions, and they're the ones that determine.
So until we get to fully staffed, we're not going to ask for any more. And is there are we concerned that if we don't get staffed in somewhat of a timely fashion, that they may reduce the funding?
Yes, it's always a concern, always a concern. Yes.
Every year, and in fact, during COVID, there was a hiring freeze, right?
Across the board, though, yeah, not just us.
Yeah, and we were earnestly trying to have our organizational charts reflect more efficiently the way we want to operate. So we were going through aggressively reorganizations of both the land development division, as well as establishing permanently the contract and awards division, and those types of activities. And it just became challenging to get, though we were caught in this vicious situation where we couldn't fill positions because the reorg wasn't done, but the reorg wasn't done because we hadn't gotten authorization, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So we've kind of gone back to the drawing board of just working with, just trying to get people on board. And we'll deal with the organizational issues once we get to a more
better staffed.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks.
I'll just remind the commission that our sufficient sums asked every year is for 260 positions.
Okay.
Commissioners, the other thing which I just wanted to highlight for you is, so if you look at and I'm on page 15 still. So if you look at our general fund allocation in 2021, you see 15.5 million and 149 positions funded. And then you see the next year 14.7. So it is a decrease, but you see 160 positions funded. What we did in order to try to preserve as many positions as we could is that we requested that funding for other current expenses, which is also called B costs at the legislature, that we shifted funding from that to personnel. So that left a smaller balance of general funds that could be used for other current expenses. And so you'll see under the non-appropriated an increase from 20 to 2020. One is because year 2023, even though we're getting an additional $32 million more on the personnel side, it's only 200,000 more. So like the amount we have available for in general funds from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2023 is reduced. And so we're picking up that reduction in our other available funds, which is the operating fund. That's the only fund that we can really look to where the commission has discretion. So I just wanted to highlight part of the reason why you're seeing an uptick in the non-appropriated funds, particularly the operating fund, is because of a dual dynamic. One is we're increasing the budget overall by a small percentage because we're anticipating more travel. Division offices, district offices are asking for more money on certain expenditures. Overall, we're just seeing a slightly higher level of activity going on because we're coming out of the pandemic. So it is an overall budget increase, but also we have less resource in the general fund to pay for other current expenses. And we can actually get you those numbers from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 23.
Joby.
Yes.
Are there any, and I understand that we don't use trust funds anymore to fund positions like we used to and I know there was a lot of pushback from beneficiaries on that, but are there any funds that are available to the department where they could hire, outside people to come in to fill the need pending the filling of these positions? I don't know the answer, but I thought one of the ways we were looking at was maybe like NAHASDA, using some NAHASDA monies to fund positions. Are there any other funds that provide us with the ability to hire people on a short-term basis just to fill the need?
I think that I think from an authorization standpoint, the administration account, well, that's appropriated. So the operating fund and the trust funds we could use, but that, two parts to that. One is what you had just indicated, a sensitivity about using trust funds for those purposes. And the second is that if we're filling positions that are not authorized, they would be unauthorized. So we just would need to make sure that we have the ability to do that. That authority is directed to the chair. So it's really a discussion for the commission, weighing the risks and benefits. But certainly I think the authority may be there to do so.
Yeah, so, and I know we're not discussing NAHASDA money and how that can be utilized to, maybe to shore up some of the people that we need, but for areas where clearly the department, especially on the outside islands, are hurting. You know, if there's an opportunity to utilize either Nahasda to fill something or some other authorized or unauthorized funds, you know, at least have that discussion with the commission, so then the commission can decide, you know, whether, like you're saying, whether it's worth the risk or not. But it does get frustrating every time you go to Hilo. There's only Nina and one other person. If they're not there, there's nobody there, right? And
Right.
so people are always calling because they can't get answers.
Right.
And they don't get responses. So I mean, they call Mike, they call me, and you know, we try and do the best we can. But I know, you know, when we ask questions, you know, it's always, you know, like we're creating a problem because we're asking. You know what I mean? Because beneficiaries are calling and we're asking, hey, you know, what's the deal with this, or when can we get an answer? When are they going to get, you know, some approval that they submitted some time ago? You know, a lot of times it's a simple answer. However, they can't get the simple answer because no one will call them back.
And the level of frustration, and as I've told Chair many times, we get the government we pay for. I mean, the reason why we're not able to provide the service right now is simply we don't have the body.
Right.
So,
but when I was young, they had like Allocation through there. They and get them to the position where they would want to work. Extend our
so again, I think where we are as an agency, we really are beyond the bone, we're into the marrow. I mean, you know, all across the board, we're just so severely depleted in our staffing. And so the first step is, you know, as we had indicated earlier, is to get authorization to fill the exempt positions we currently have, lowest hanging fruit. Where the commission can be most helpful for us, especially on the neighbor islands, is a recruitment. Because even in the positions, when we have positions, you know, available, just encouraging people that you feel would be good candidates to apply, especially for the civil service. You know, and it's not easy. It's extremely difficult to find someone who's good, who's willing to accept what we can pay, and, you know, take a position at the Department of Hawaiian Homeland. They're rare. It's very hard.
Is it possible to get that information out to the commissioners? Because I've never seen any open positions sent to me saying, do you know anybody who would be interested in filling this position? So I think if we got that out, at least the commission would be aware of that fact, and then they could lend the support that that you need. So
we can definitely do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be really helpful,
Okay.
not only for the district supervisor position, but for all positions on the island. No.
We can definitely work on that.
There's people out there probably not realizing that there's openings, but they go to the employment office and they might find posting. So all of these positions, let's say, is it posted already or?
Many of the positions are, there's not, you know, there's, I don't have off the top of my head how many are in recruitment with civil service, but I know we have a few that are out already in recruitment with civil service.
On the DHERD website, they, you know, there's certain classifications like clerks and that the state government uses a lot. They always have on their website recruitment.
Yeah, so for us commissioners, it would be helpful for us to know what's available for our district.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
We'll be sure to do that.
So Joby, so as soon as you return that position that was taken from Maui, I will be happy to participate in recruitment. I think I want to add to what David said, because it kind of connects us to the reality of the outer island. Kapolei cannot replace, by taking positions away, they cannot replace the presence that's required. Because it's the people on the ground that get the calls. It's the people on the ground where the beneficiaries go knocking on the door. And so again, I go back to these 81 positions. It just does not logically make sense that Oahu would take from outer islands when you have all this opportunity here to fill. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
I do want to just say one thing to that. We did try to, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, and it actually was a successful experiment. We recruited and placed positions that were actually located in Honolulu to the neighbor islands. So if you recall, we had a planner in Maui. We had a member of Paula's team, Contact and Awards on Maui. We had Halealoha in Hilo. And right now we have Kuli, of course, that's actually a position I think that's physically located on, but it's deployed, doesn't make sense to have it here. So we do understand, and the neighbor islands certainly there are a number, it helped us to expand our recruitment because there's a lot of talent on the neighbor islands that don't necessarily want to relocate to Honolulu. Unfortunately, none of those employees are still with us.
Right.
But in any case, so your concerns about what's happening in the district offices are not, I mean, we hear them, what you're saying.
Yeah, and I do acknowledge what Maui was given with Joanne and then the planner. I did and continue to appreciate that effort. But what we're talking about here is bare bones requirements.
Sure.
And that has to be restored. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Mike?
I just want to say, Joby, so I'm committed, I'm willing to help our East Hawaii office to help in the recruitment process. So looking
Great.
forward to receiving the information.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
The position, that's for the
The
position.
position, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Message heard.
Okay. The last page, commissioners, we wanted to give you a sense of where our fund balances are and where our estimated fund balances will be. This is very estimated based on our budget. And we focused on those funds that are included in our in the operating budget, as well as the loan budget and the rehab budget. So I will, I think the only thing I wanted to note for the commission is we made one error, which is in the Hawaiian Homeland's trust fund, the endowment. Although we are not asking for any current fiscal year allocation because we are sensitive to the fact that we have not been successful in proceeding with the investment of that endowment. There is an amount that we are asking for from the prior year authorization, which was the approximately 13 million. So the balance would, the available balance would not be 126, it'd be more like 113. And that's noted on the CIP amount that the CIP budget requested. I don't know, if there's anything more on that page.
No. These numbers are pretty good. They're pretty, it's going to be a moving target in the next 2 weeks because it's the closing of our fiscal year. So there's going to be a lot of contracts and purchase orders coming in the next 2 weeks. So The balances are subject to change, but are not significant.
Questions on that? Seeing none.
I think the last thing I just wanted to make sure the commission was aware of is most of our operations are run out of two major trust and special funds, and that's the administration account and the operating fund, as you've been hearing over and over again. So we did try to leave within the fund balances that are estimated. You'll see the 17.3 and the 9.3 in the operating and administration account. That's about 26.6. And that will cover, without any additional revenues, approximately 1 full year of operations for us based on the B costs, if we had to, right? So that's probably enough for us to just cover 1 full year. We probably would have to trim back if we didn't get any general funds, let's say, on the personnel side, because, but it could cover our B costs fully. So just we're trying to ensure that staff have what they need to do in order to try to have a successful programmatic year, but also be responsible in terms of the allocation of the resources, so that we at least recognize that there's a catastrophic event on our general fund side. We have some resource to absorb that.
What would that be, catastrophic event?
They zero out our general funding.
Because a hurricane hits and they use all the funds to rehabilitate the state. They don't
Could
fund
be.
any of the state departments.
Or recession, a deep recession, and they cut back on general funds.
There have been many years of zero funding for DHHL. And there's a lot of history to that, but
It's just being, I guess, prudent to keep, some savings available should something happen. I think we all do that in our household budgets.
Or I should start.
and so that's the last.
That's the last one.
We did have an exec session, but it's really at the commission's discretion if they feel they need
Okay.
for that.
Well, we have. Okay. Okay. Shall we take a 10-minute break and then come back and decide if you want some discussion in exec session on the budget? Okay, we'll have a 10-minute recess. Some commissioners have questions, so may I have a motion to go into executive session?
So, second.
Okay. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Okay, we're now.
More
attorney.
Oh, it's Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan's on the, there he is. There he is. Do we need some?
And Sharon, can you guys, go into the weight room? Because if I remove you, you cannot come back.
Sharon. If it's okay, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, whatever staff we need, we should have.